Right now, Bitcoin is breaking towards the downside, and you can see that we've actually broken down from this rising wedge pattern that I've actually talked about in a previous video. So of course, I'm going to be talking about what's likely to be happening next, since of course in a previous video I did take a trade, and of course you can see right now I'm more than $50,000 in the profit right now, and you can see that we're about 140% up, and we only took this on a 5x leverage. So this is an amazing trade that we've taken so far. Bitcoin has actually dropped about 21% or so since our entry. So of course, this is an amazing achievement, and congratulations if you're able to capitalize on the trade off of the analysis if you agreed. But of course, I'm going to be talking about what I'm expecting for Bitcoin, since we're trading at the bottom of the range right now. So of course, I have a lot of different charts and I have a lot of different scenarios to actually make the decision of what I expect to be happening next. And of course, I'm going to be talking about all of this in the video. So with that being said, let's not waste any more time. Let's get straight away into the content. So without wasting time here, you can see that we have the S&P on the left hand side of the screen at the top. We have the Nasdaq to the right hand side of the screen. We also have Bitcoin, and we have the crude oil at the bottom. And you can see right now that Bitcoin is actually moving towards the downside aggressively, whilst we have the stock market actually moving towards the downside. Nasdaq has been consolidating, but lately it's been moving towards the downside also, and we have oil actually starting to creep towards the top side. So of course, since we have ongoing war tensions, the price of oil has been very volatile, and at the minute it's creeping towards the upside, meaning that inflation fears are still, meaning that it's causing a lot of global inflation. And of course, this has an effect on risk assets, since of course with higher inflation, the Fed has an incentive to actually keep interest rates the same or hike them, which actually drives liquidity out of markets. And as you can see right now by this tweet by the busy letter, that we are having ongoing negotiations and no final decision has been reached in terms of a ceasefire. So of course, at the minute, we still have low probabilities that anytime soon we're going to be getting that peace deal, and we can look on Polymarket to actually get a visual representation of what the market is actually feeling like and what traders are actually pricing in. And you can see right now that the percentage of the US-Iran peace agreement is quite low, and it starts to increase near the end of the year. So of course, looking at Bitcoin, we highlighted that we're in a rising wedge pattern previously on my last video, and I talked about the trade I'm taking all the way at the top here. So you can actually go to my channel over here and you can look. I said Bitcoin is trapping everyone, my new $250,000 trade that I'm taking, and of course I covered everything on that video, and we started to enter our position in and around the 80k level, and we actually stacked our orders in this box over here. So you can look at the thumbnail and you can go onto that video if you want to see how I took that position. You can see that we actually tapped in towards our box, and we had multiple orders to the top side, and of course we hit about 50% of them, and we actually just narrowly missed our order at 83,000. And of course Bitcoin started to pivot from there, and we were targeting the bottom of the range after deviating back inside the range. And of course it took a little bit of time to play out, since of course we were actually starting to grab the liquidity wave by wave. And of course, once Bitcoin was done grabbing the liquidity, we actually reverted all the way to the bottom of the range, exactly like predicted. So make sure to be subscribed if you want to be taking the next trade that I'm going to be looking at. But yeah, in general, typically the rising wedge pattern has a target at the bottom of the rising wedge. So once you break out from the apex, you usually target the bottom of the pattern, and that's your measured move. So of course I have a broad kind of target range where I'm going to be taking profits. And of course we started to enter that at 62,000, and this goes all the way down to around 57,000, where I'm going to be closing out the trade. But of course right now I'm going to be taking some profit live. So you can see right here, I'm going to actually close my limits first. So I'm going to cancel all the limit orders that I had previously at the top of the range. Now I'm going to add a stop loss, and of course I'm going to actually put that at my entry price. So my stop loss is going to go at 79,900, and you can see over there that that's pretty much a break even, and I made a little bit of a funding. So of course, although if it hits break even I make $18 there, I've already realized about 700 off the funding fee, since of course when the funding rates were positive I was able to realize some profits over there. So of course that's quite nice to know. But as of now, the position is risk-free, and we're floating about $50,000 in profit right now. And of course, the worst case scenario, if somehow we actually pump well over 21%, then of course the risk is off the table. But in my opinion, I still think it's low probability. I think that potentially we're going to be hovering within this range before potentially reclaiming it. and getting a bounce, or we could just continue to go lower. But even if we start to bounce up now, I do still think that's likely we come down. So I'm not going to close the position fully, but right now I am going to actually mark an order, and I'm going to close the position about 50%, and you can see over there that I'm going to actually realize about half of my profits. So you can see right there, I've realized about $26,000 in profit altogether since I've just closed 50% of the position. And I will be updating my group on this, so make sure to be joining that using that second link down below. So as you can see there, I do have a free community, and of course using that second link down below in the description, you can actually join that to be getting updates on my trades and things that I won't cover on X or on YouTube. So make sure to be joining that over there. But yeah, just to recap, we're about 140% in profits, and we've actually realized about $26,000 in profit, and we're right now floating about $24,000 in profit so far. We've also removed the risk from the table, and we've put our stop loss to break even. But yeah, on that medium time frame, you can see that this bear flag pattern that previously actually played out for Bitcoin has actually played out again. And of course, you can see that we've been talking about this for a long time on the channel. You can see that if I actually go on towards my thumbnails over here, you can see that I've been talking about this quite a while ago. The second drop that potentially is playing out, and right now we're actually seeing that play out for Bitcoin, and we're actually moving towards the downside. So of course, that's one thing that's actually nice to be seeing, since we were short on the channel. And of course, we're actually crashing in towards this major support level that was previous all-time highs for Bitcoin. And of course, it was a major key level in that 2024 range that we had for breaking towards the top side. We've now returned to it, bounced, and we're now back on it again, testing it. So of course, if we can't hold this level, it's likely we're going to be seeing deeper drawdown for this bear market before actually returning towards the upside again. So of course, this is one thing that we need to be keeping in mind. But yeah, when I was taking my trade, I did talk about this scenario also, and highlighted by Mr. Crypto is the sell in May and go away theory. And of course, each bear market that we've actually moved into May, we can see that the following weeks after, we actually move towards the downside. And of course, throughout Q3, we see slow borrow and price action, and especially in the midterm years, we do see a lot of drawdown, and that's already playing out so far. So you can see now, if I go into Mr. Crypto's profile and look at the updated chart, you can see that right now that's already playing out. We've come into May and we started to move towards the downside, and of course we're dumping. So if history does repeat, summer is likely to remain bearish, and I do think that this is the more likely scenario, and I'll show you in the next few charts why. And then after that, we're likely to actually enter accumulation, or we start to entertain the idea of a Bitcoin bottom. But yeah, I did talk about the Bank of Japan pivot. The last decision was no change, and we talked about what was likely to happen by this white box that we actually highlighted. And of course, you can see that just as predicted, it's actually closed red, and we've actually started to move towards the downside. And you can see it's actually started to print some red candles. We started to move towards the downside after that Bank of Japan interest rate decision, even though there was no hike. I did say that it's likely we are still going to be seeing a pivot. So yeah, looking at this chart, you can see that this is where we started to enter our positions, and this chart is just the Bitcoin trading ranges, and typically we do get false breakouts and breakdowns. And we talked about on the channel the fact that we're potentially going to be getting a false breakout here where everybody gets bullish, and this is the position where we're going to be taking a short, and we're going to be fading a lot of the people. And you can see we've realized about $26,000 already, and we're floating about $24,000 in profit with our stop loss at break even. So of course, we actually capitalized off of this move already. But the main thing to take away for Bitcoin is we actually move within waves. We do get periods of expansion, as you can see over here, but the majority of Bitcoin's price action is actually within a range. And of course, once we do get these explosive expansion moves down, you know, it gets quite, you know, crazy. And this is what Bitcoin is quite known for. But a lot of people don't actually take into account that we actually spend the majority of time within a range, and the crazy volatility expansion that we see from Bitcoin only lasts a short period of time. But yeah, you can see we can actually drag this box across now, and we can actually see that this false breakout is actually confirmed here, and we've actually moved towards the downside. And I always said that every time Bitcoin gets a fake out, whether it's at the top, we move to the bottom side of the range. If it's at the bottom, we move to the top side of the range. And this continues to play out for Bitcoin. Every time we get a fake out, we move to the opposite side of the range. And I said it's likely, if we get confirmation below the $75,000 level, it's likely we trade to the bottom side of the range. And of course, that's exactly what's happening right now. So we're not quite there yet. in terms of the peak or bottom of the range, which is around that $59,000 to $60,000 level. So of course, my target is within this green box over here, where I'm going to be scaling out of my position. And I think around 57,000, I do want to come out of my position, even if we dump as low to 52, because I want to kind of switch my mindset into potentially looking to long Bitcoin, since of course now we're at the extremity of the range, and this is where it's likely we're going to be experiencing some sort of Bitcoin reversal. So I do want to be changing my mindset and gearing up for that accumulation range that potentially could be playing out if we move to the bottom, as you can see from this market maker sell model that we've highlighted on the channel also. So in terms of price action, I do think that, you know, as we move to the bottom side of the range, I'm going to be scaling out of my position. And of course, if we spend time below this range, I'll be looking for a potential Bitcoin bottom. And of course, if we get a reclaim, I'll be looking to trade it back up to the other side of the range. But this is one scenario that's potentially going to be playing out because, you know, we can continue dumping towards the downside. And yeah, there's a lot of different things that could happen, but this is one thing that's on my mind that I'm going to be highlighting so far. But yeah, as you can see by this chart, all the downside liquidity has been getting grabbed. And yeah, the market maker sell model is playing out. So that's one thing to be actually bearing in mind. And we are approaching that accumulation range now, since of course this range is so far playing out. And I do think it's likely we can see that move towards that $52,000 level, or potentially we can start to entertain the idea of a Bitcoin bottom and a new range forming in towards the tail end of the year. But of course, this is going to take some time to play out. So I'm just going to be mentioning it on the channel, and we can actually review this chart as it develops. And yeah, you can see we had a lot of US selling that's potentially led to this move towards the downside. And until this actually feels positive again, I still do think that sellers are in control. But yeah, for that higher time frame, right now the MACDs is still negative, and of course the histograms are still printing red bars, and of course the EMAs are angled towards the downside and still moving downwards. So in my opinion, it's likely we continue to see downside pressures for Bitcoin, and it's going to be harder for Bitcoin to, for example, rally to all-time highs so quickly. It's going to take time, and until the MACD starts to cross bullish again, that's the only time we're potentially going to start to staircase our way towards the upside. But I don't think that we're going to be seeing any sharp, you know, rallies towards the upside anymore. It's likely that we're going to continue towards the downside and now form an accumulation range similar to 2022, and of course similar to 2018 after we've had all this downside already. So of course, until the histograms start to fade and move towards the upside, that's the only time where I'm going to be actually anticipating a Bitcoin bottom. And of course, we actually need to identify the bottom before the MACD starts to flip bullish and cross bullish, because after it crosses bullish and the histograms start to print green bars, the bottom is likely going to be already in, since this is a lagging indicator. But on a monthly time frame, it's nice to actually just get a view of what's actually happening in terms of the momentum. So on this chart, you can see a likely example of how the bottom is actually going to form and what's going to be happening in terms of how Bitcoin is going to be entering a bottom. And you can see already that we're in phase 4, so we're more than halfway in towards a Bitcoin bottom. So it's likely that now we're going to continue towards the downside, and maybe have one more leg down in phase 6, as you can see over here. And then of course it's likely we enter phase 7, where we establish a bottom and move towards the upside. But I do want to mention that history doesn't always repeat exactly, but it certainly does rhyme. So we are following 2022 bear market bottom already, but of course in phase 6 of 2022 we did have the FTX bank run, which led to price action cascading towards the downside. There was lots of liquidations across the board, and that caused that sharp move downwards. So if we don't get news of that magnitude, it's gonna potentially play out a little different. So this is just something to take with a pinch of salt, but in terms of timing, it's something I do want to be looking at and using to actually gauge when we're going to be getting that bottom. So now looking at this chart over here, you can see that we have the Bitcoin key moving averages that I covered on the previous video, and of course right now we're actually approaching that 300 and 350 week moving average already, where we're likely going to be bottoming, which actually goes from 53,000 all the way to 47,000. So of course these are two price levels that I am watching, since of course every bull market previously we've at least hit the 300 week moving average, if not the 350 week moving average, if we get a deep correction like in 2022 where we had the news of the FTX bank run. So in my opinion, I do think it's likely that Bitcoin still has some downside to go. But yeah, that'll be it for me. Make sure to follow me on X to be staying up to date with all my updates, and I'll be seeing you guys in the next one. Have a blessed rest of your day. Peace, guys. See ya. Bye bye.